was 16 years old, I was told that I had 6 months to live. And it was extremely shocking for my family because, I was just kind of your typical kid. I was 16 years old, I was on the yearbook, I played volleyball. I sat bench for volleyball, but I went out, I had a uniform, I had a lot of friends. We used to go to the Jersey Shore for the summer and go play out, at the beach and stuff like that. So it was just kind of a typical, life, and didn't seem like there was anything ever wrong with me. So the first clue that something was actually wrong was one weekend I had gone to the Jersey Shore with my friends, and we had been out all day playing beach volleyball. And actually, if I'm on a team of people who don't know what they're doing, I'm pretty badass. I can dive into the sand and spike and do all this stuff. And so, we've been really active, and that night we were up all night talking and hanging out. And the next morning, next afternoon when we actually woke up, I remember I had the most excruciating pain I'd ever felt in my right shoulder. It was not like a normal pain, it felt like something was broken, it hurt so bad. And all I could think about was it must have been the spiking, or I did something. But I didn't want to be a downer to anyone. I didn't say anything. But I remember we went to a diner, and I had these pancakes, and I could not get the pancakes in my mouth. It hurt so bad. And it was just, I was thinking, okay, when I get home, I got to tell Mom because I think I need to go to the hospital. This hurts really bad. And I was leaving the next morning anyway. I said, okay, this is pretty bad. Maybe I need some medicine or something. And so I got through that day somehow and went to sleep that night. And the next morning I woke up, and this excruciating pain that felt like it would take weeks to heal was gone, just gone. Right shoulder was completely normal. But the strange thing was that same exact identical pain was in my left shoulder. And not being, at that point, a doctor or scientist, I had no idea what that could mean or if that was even possible. I remember sitting there going, okay, pancakes I eat with my right hand. It was the right arm, but it moved. And so I don't know what I was thinking, but it was so unusual and it was so strange that I just didn't say anything because I just didn't think anyone would take it seriously. It sounded like a hypochondriac thing or just crazy. And after a couple of days, it disappeared from that arm too. And I just kind of forgot about it for a little bit. And as the summer went on, little strange things like that started happening. At one point, my knee started really, really hurting badly. That pain showed up again in my knee. And there was some swelling that came with it. So I went, something identifiable. And I showed my mom, look, my knee is swollen. And she went, okay, let's make an appointment with the doctor, which meant I had like 4 weeks before I was going to see somebody. And not long after that, migraines started. And these were so bad that I would literally be vomiting for days from the pain. And when they first started, my mom was just reminding me of this story. I was talking to her when I was writing my book and I was trying to get stories, and I hadn't remembered this. But she said she had taken me out to eat with some family and friends, and I got a migraine at the table, and she had to take me home and leave everybody else there and pull over on the side of the road for me to vomit on the way home. I had totally forgotten that. So when I got back to the house, I had this huge rash across my face, going from one cheek across my nose to the other side. And when my dad asked me about that, I said, well, it'd been coming and going, but I thought teenager acne, so I hadn't said anything. I'd just been covering it, but it was really bright after I'd been throwing up. And he said, I think your skin is a window to what's going on inside your body, and I think we need to call a doctor right away. Now, I gotta admit, at the time, I laughed at him because he has something called dad science. I don't know if anyone else's dad has this, but my dad creates his own ideas and theories about things, and usually they're just kind of bizarre. And so it's just, all right, dad science, I'll see the doctor. But now I actually use that when I talk to my patients that, a healthy body has glowing, healthy skin. And when you've got something going on visibly on the outside, it is a sign. So he chalk went up to dad science on that one. But my doctor was actually really concerned, and she met me in the emergency room. And that's the day where I went from kind of a normal teenager with little weird things happening in there to fully just a sick person where, they were just taking blood every other day. I had like needle marks all over my arm, just in and out of the hospital. My blood test showed that my kidneys were in trouble, so they sent me in for a kidney biopsy. So next thing I know, I'm going into surgery. So it was just so chaotic. And the doctor told us what happened, and they said, you're in stage 4 kidney failure, and you've got 6 months if we don't do something really, really aggressive. 6 months you'll be in dialysis or you'll be dead. So, so my family's very much, I was raised by a family. They're immigrants. They're Holocaust survivors, and they came to this country, for opportunity, and also with a very firm belief that doctors know everything. I've never met a patient who thinks the same thing, but when I was a kid, I was raised that whatever your doctor says is what you do, and so my parents went along with, okay, you tell us what to do. So I was put on high-dose steroids. It was about 7 different pills I had to take every day, and I also was put on experimental chemotherapy to try to save my kidneys. And so the reason they were using chemotherapy is they had this idea, because chemotherapy normally is used for cancer patients. And the side effect of chemotherapy is it shuts down the immune system. So people who are on chemo often get really sick with all these other colds and other problems because their immune system doesn't work. Well, with lupus, your immune system's attacking your own body. And so my immune system had suddenly stopped recognizing my kidneys as my own and were attacking my kidneys, trying to kill it, as if they were invading. And so the thought was, if we can shut down the immune system with the chemotherapy, maybe we can put in a remission. I call it rebooting me. They rebooted it. They shut down my immune system and then just slowly let it restart again. And it worked. It was a miserable 2 years, because they had me on it from 16 to 18 years old. Every month it was increasing doses. And they really didn't know what to do back then. It was an experimental treatment. Nowadays they put people on it for a couple weeks max, maybe a month. But I took it for 2 years straight. So 16 to 18, my life was really about get the chemo. For a week I'd be just unable to eat because of all the vomiting. The second week I'd be afraid to eat because of the vomiting. By the third week, I'd finally start to be getting my energy back, and then the fourth week was time for their treatment already. And that was, I just kind of went through those 2 years like that, where I did my treatments, I took my meds, I went to school, I studied. Whenever I couldn't go to class, I would just read my textbooks. So, I was already a nerd to begin with. People thought I was teacher's pet at that point because I knew all the answers when the teacher would ask a question, but it was because I was reading ahead, because I didn't know what would happen and if I'd be able to study when it was time to. So in spite of all that, I still graduated top 10 in my class and got into my dream college with scholarship. And I actually started my first day of college at Carnegie Mellon a week after my last chemotherapy treatment. I'd already not only gone through the kidney failure, but I'd also developed blood clots that had happened when I was in medical school. And so I was taking blood thinners because I had experienced a mini stroke, a transient ischemic attack. And thankfully, I didn't damage my brain, but I was in a lot of danger of dying at that point if I didn't use this blood thinner for the rest of my life. So I was injecting myself every day. But I really, at that point, I was so just grateful every time there was some treatment that could keep me going. It kind of just seemed like, hey, not my time yet. Like, there's just another thing. And I always joked around I was an overachiever, that, I was going to get really sick, but then there'd be a medication and I was going to keep going and I was going to get better. And so at that point, when I met my husband, I was on the blood thinners, but otherwise, I was trucking through. I was 2 months away from graduating medical school. And so this dream I had that the doctors told me and everybody else told me, don't go for being a doctor. You need to relax and get enough sleep and, not have too much stress. And I just wanted to have my life. I wasn't going to just sit around, I wasn't going to be disabled. I wasn't going to be the sick person. I wanted to do something. So I was doing it. So I was almost there. And I was really just at a highlight in my life. Like, I could see it. I'd gotten into this residency at UCLA, Harvard in California. So everything was great, and I wasn't really needing anybody. And then I met this most amazing person, Thomas Tadlock, and he just changed everything for me. And I went from only dreaming about a white coat to dreaming about a white dress, And the hardest thing ever to do was to tell him about my illness and the fact that marrying me was not going to be long term. And he, it was hard for him to hear, but he just said that he'd rather have a short life with me than a lifetime with someone else. So he would take care of me. He would live with me and he'd take care of me as long as I had. So quite a man, because I was told I couldn't have kids. I was told I probably wouldn't live past my 50s. I'd probably be handicapped by my 30s, but he wanted to go for it. So if he was willing to go for it, then I was willing to go for it too. So at that point, it was really about just planning. So not only was I now getting ready for residency and finally got my MD and I was going to be a doctor and all the things I'd been hoping to do and I was going to be able to help all these people, I was going to get married. And so it was really, really exciting. It was like the universe couldn't give me more. You know, I was so grateful for everything I had. So the next thing I did was I said, well, you know, at the time my husband was working for MTV, and he was helping recording artists get really fit for videos, you know. And I said, I want to look like one of them. And at first he thought it was a trap, like, no, sweetie, you look fine. You know, men get a little nervous, you know, and I said, no, I want to look great. We're going to go to Maui, we're going to get married, and I want to look as good as I feel emotionally. And I want to do it in a healthy way. And that's what he did. It wasn't about starvation, it wasn't about hurting your body, it was about learning how to take care of your body. And so I wish I could say, people always ask me, how did I know that this was going to heal my lupus? And I did not. I wish I was that smart. I'd gone through 4 years of medical school, so I knew there was no way to actually get rid of lupus. All you can do is control it with medication and hope for the best. There was no treatment that was going to ever make it go away. So that wasn't my goal at all. It was purely vanity. I was like every other woman who was getting married who wanted to look great in their wedding dress. I just didn't want to starve myself like all my friends did. I have one friend who starved herself for her wedding day and gained 20 pounds on her honeymoon. Literally, like she weighed herself, 20. I didn't want that. I wanted to take care of myself. I didn't want to be at risk for hurting myself further. So he created a program for me called the Dream Body Program. And it was 4 months of learning how to nourish my body in a way that would cause me to have a fast metabolism. And what a fast metabolism really is, and most people have no understanding of really what metabolism is a measurement of your cell's ability to change when you ask them to. Change in terms of losing fat, or gaining muscle, or changing your health. And so when you have a fast metabolism, you can get any kind of result you want. But the only way to get it is to give your cells the fuel they need. And most people think about fuel in terms of these big building blocks like protein and carbohydrates and fat, but that's not what it's about. It's about vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients and enzymes and things that your cells actually need. And so he developed a program for me where I had to eat so much food, more than I'd ever eaten before, and drink all this water and do all this, eat more than I ever had before. And he told me that was going to make me actually lose weight. So even though I was skeptical, I did it. And in the 4 months, not only did I go from a size 10 to a size 3, but I was really fit, and I'd felt the best I'd ever felt in my entire life. I had no more aches and pains. My joints felt great. I was energetic, even though I was an intern at this point who was working 30-hour shifts up all night in the emergency room, and I still had energy. In fact, my director pulled me aside, the residency director pulled me aside because he was concerned that I seemed way too peppy and upbeat for an intern. And most of them are morose and depressed. And I showed up every day with a smile, and he said, I'm a little concerned that, you seem too happy. And I thought he was really, he meant this. I said, I don't know what I have to be sad about. I said, I have the job of my dreams. I get to help people every day. I've got an amazing man in my life. I live in a place where it's always sunny. What is there to be sad about? And he just kind of, okay. And my fellow interns also said that it annoyed them that I was too happy, but I didn't care. I just did my thing. So in spite of all of that, I had tremendous energy. And so when it was time to get my blood tests and everything, I didn't really think it was going to affect them because that wasn't possible. I just, I thought this was just something that improved how I felt. And so I told my husband, well, whatever this is that you did, I'm going to eat this way from now on because I feel so good. But I didn't expect it to affect my blood tests. And what happened was when I got my next round of blood tests a few months later, all the lupus indicators were negative. And really, if you're not from a medical background, it's important to understand that this is medically impossible. When you've had your blood test convert over to positive for lupus, there's something called an ANA, anti-nuclear antibody. It's an antibody against the DNA in your cells or the nucleus of your cells. Once that's positive, it's positive forever, we thought. Mine was negative. The antibodies against my DNA, which were in the 20,000s when I was diagnosed, higher than most people had ever seen, those were negative. Everything that would indicate that I had lupus was negative. And the blood clotting antibodies I had, those were only on the high side of normal, which normally wouldn't even treat except for the symptoms I'd had. And so it was funny because these were new doctors out in California that I'd never seen before. And the doctor had a medical student with him, and he said, "This woman alleges to have lupus, but we're not finding any evidence of it," as if I was trying to fake it. I want nothing to do with this disease. So, they said, okay, well, maybe there's just an error in the test. Go have your wedding, come back, and we'll test again. And we tested again a few months later, and now even the antibodies for the clots were completely negative. And my blood pressure was coming down to that of an athlete. And my genetically high cholesterol that I was told I could do nothing but blame my parents, that's what my doctor had told me as a kid, that was completely normal and, in fact, optimal. And that's what's happened ever since then. And right now I'm sitting here, and it's been 10 years since that first negative blood test, and there has been no sign of lupus coming back, in spite of me continuing to go on and not only expose myself to those things they said I shouldn't, like going out in the sunshine, but also having 2 children. I have continued to actually get healthier and stronger as the years have gone by. So it's really important when you're looking at nutrition, when you're looking at diet, looking at not only what you're putting in, but more importantly, what you're missing. When most people think about wanting to lose weight or wanting to get healthy, they think mostly about what they're going to cut out. And that is important, but many people don't even think about what are they putting in? What are they nourishing themselves with? So, you see people where they're cutting calories, and they're saying, okay, I'm not going to eat, cookies anymore. But then they're eating a low-calorie processed snack that's made of chemicals, right? And so they're not getting any nourishment. And so the real key when you're trying to transform your body, whether it's for your health or whether it's for your vanity, as I originally wanted, right? You have to look at what you're missing first. So, you want to get rid of the things, of course, that are going to cause inflammation and disease. So the biggest factors would be getting rid of dairy. Dairy is the most toxic thing people put in their body. I won't even call it food. It is not food for humans. And the research is just irrefutable that it's probably the #1 cause of disease being started in people, starting from childhood. So I have very, very, let me find the word. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to remove that from your diet. And I think it shouldn't even be in children's diets. I tell my clients that I'd rather them give their kid a cigarette than a glass of milk, and that usually gets their attention. They think I'm a little wacky, but that gets their attention. So getting rid of dairy products, getting rid of animal products, meat products, eggs, all of those things, they're directly causing disease in the body. They increase inflammation by increasing acidity, which actually causes inflammation in the body and an inability of the cells to be able to optimally function. They also have shown, Scientific American just had a research study where they were showing saturated fats from dairy, but animal products in general, change the flora in your gut, the bacteria in your gut, so that you don't have the right bacteria that you need for your health. And right now, the gut is one of the biggest things people are focusing on as the key to your health. And doesn't that make sense? It's what you put into your body. Where is it digested? Right here. And so when we don't eat the right foods, that is the gateway to creating disease in the rest of your body. So when those bacteria are not what they should be, that also starts an immune response in your body right on your gut. And what they found is there's actually hemorrhages that occur inside of the gut lining after you're exposed to saturated fat. So there is no benefit to eating animal products, and actually there's a lot of risk. So all those things have to go. The other thing that's really disease-causing is processed foods, and I say foods lightly. There are things that we've created in laboratories that our bodies do not recognize as food. And so when you put that into your body, and I'm talking about things that have a shelf life of 50 years, something I would say, if it's something your grandma wouldn't recognize, it's not food. If you pick up an apple and you read the label, the ingredient is apple. If you pick something up and it's got multiple ingredients, and most of them you'd have to be a scientist to understand what it is, it's not food, it's processed. And what they've shown is they've done studies where they've shown if someone eats a processed food and they take blood tests a little while later, there's actually an increase in immune response in the bloodstream. So you're actually causing an immune response by eating these things that are not foods. And if your body is busy having an immune response to what you're eating, then it can't be busy taking care of the cells and doing the jobs they're supposed to be doing. Because your immune system's supposed to be healing other problems that are going on, real bacteria that are attacking you, cancer that's coming up. We all have cancer cells that form, but our immune system's supposed to get rid of them. But if our immune system's busy trying to battle a fake attack from processed foods, it's not going to function the way it should be. So these really are a much bigger threat than people really realize. So you want to eat natural whole foods, ones that you could, if you couldn't grow it yourself, I don't have a green thumb, I can't grow anything, but you at least know somebody could. so you can identify it. So those are the top things to get rid of. The other one that you want to get rid of is really all of the different kinds of oils. When you look at like vegetable oil, whatever Crisco is, lard, of course, the saturated fats, but even all the different kinds of vegetable oils, those are very laden in something called omega-6 fatty acids. And while those are an essential fatty acid your body needs, it doesn't need that much of it. And what the omega-6 fatty acids do is they are the initiator of the inflammation response, the inflammatory response in your body. So when you need inflammation to fight something, you need omega-6. Omega-6 is supposed to be balanced by omega-3, which is our anti-inflammatory pathway. Starts with omega-3s. Those should be 1-to-1. Most people have a 40-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3, which is why we are always inflamed and why we are always sick. If you are inflamed, you're going to get sick. Your genetics say what illness you get, but whether or not you've got inflammation because of your food, that's what is the trigger for whether or not you get sick at all. And most folks have that backwards, including doctors. They think that you're going to get sick based on your genetics. No, your genetics just tells you which illness you're going to get. So it's really important to minimize inflammation in your body so that you're not going to set off these triggers to develop illness. So you want to stay away from all those inflammatory foods. Then what do you put in? You put in the fuel that your cells need to optimize their own health and their own function. So what is that fuel? Those vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, enzymes, they all come from plants. That is the Garden of Eden. That is the source of our fuel. It's the source of all of the vitamins that we need for our body to function. All that comes from plants. My favorite is greens. Greens are just loaded. So kale and spinach, you should get a lot of that. Vegetables, wonderful sources of vitamins and minerals, all the enzymes you need. And you want to eat this stuff raw because everything's going to be intact. You can eat it cooked too. It doesn't hurt you to eat, some steamed broccoli, but you're not going to get everything the way nature intended it and the way your body is designed to break it down. Our body knows exactly what to do with what nature gave us. Once you start messing with that, now it's trickier. Now you're not going to get everything you need. So it's really important to have the raw foods be a big part of your diet. And so that's what we advocate, is that you should have a high raw diet where the majority of what you eat all day is going to be raw greens and vegetables and some fruits too. So that's the biggest part of what you eat. The next thing that's really important that you get is enough water. Most people are chronically dehydrated. And the most common symptom of dehydration is lack of thirst. And so when someone tells me I'm just never thirsty, I know they're dehydrated. And the way I understand it in my mind, and I tell stories in my head, is that your body's going, okay, there's no water, so we're dying of thirst. So you're not going to keep suffering, right? What you do is you turn off the suffering, right? Just like when they say when you're drowning, at first you panic and then it becomes peaceful. I think it's our body's way of coping with, okay, well, there's no water, so I'll just turn off the thirst drive and that way we won't suffer. So people don't realize they're thirsty. The first thing that happens when people start drinking enough water, and I'm talking about at least a half an ounce of water per body weight, or per pound of body weight. So at least a half an ounce of water per pound of body weight for survival. For healing, I go up to at least an ounce. Minimum of 96 ounces a day is what my husband and I have seen from all the clients we've worked with. Once you hit 96 ounces a day, you start seeing some change here. Below that, you really don't. And so when people start adding all that water in, what we notice is they're thirsty all the time. I'm drinking a gallon of water a day. Why am I so thirsty? It's because your body goes, oh my gosh, we've reached the lake. We found it. So now it's time to drink. And so your body adjusts quickly, and all of a sudden there's this demand. And what is that demand for? Well, every cellular reaction that happens in your body, and there's just millions of reactions that are going on every moment, they all require water as a reactant. If you're missing water, those chemical reactions can't occur. So whether you're asking your body to, drop some fat, or whether you're asking your body to heal a disease, if you don't have water, it can't do what it wants to do. It can't function properly. And so for some people, that's the biggest factor holding them back, is their water intake. So, in the beginning, you're in the bathroom all the time, because your bladder is also like, whoa, waking up, like, what are we doing here? We're drinking? Okay. So in the beginning, you're just kind of running to the bathroom all the time. But eventually, you can adjust to it. And it's not that bad. And, after just what I told you so far, between the water and all the vegetables and the fiber, you'll be in the bathroom a lot. When I first did this, I thought I should just move my desk in there and just see patients. Next, but they weren't down with that. But eventually your body kind of gets into this rhythm and goes, oh my gosh, okay, we're eating for life now. We can do this, and it becomes something that you can manage, and your body can actually thrive on it. So those components are super, super important.
Sniper, pelican.
And then the next thing your body needs is, I mentioned those omega-3 fatty acids. If you're at a 60-to-1 ratio and you're inflamed all the time, we've got to do whatever we can to get that ratio back to where it should be. So don't have all the omega-3 fatty acids from all those oils, all those processed oils, and then flood yourself with these omega-3 fats. Now, a lot of people are afraid of fat. I'm not afraid of it when it's the right fats. So fats from whole foods, like if you're eating an avocado, you don't have anything to worry about. Your body knows how to eat an avocado. It's great. It wouldn't, you know that it's good for you when you're eating it, right? So I see people who are afraid they eat like half of one. No, don't be afraid of an avocado. Be afraid of like pouring a bunch of oil over top of your salad. That's different, right? So whole food fats, and then omega-3 fats, flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, they should be part of your daily diet. And those are amazing for you because, one, they're directly anti-inflammatory. The more of those you consume, the faster your cells and your health transform. It's amazing. We've seen when people who are eating, a cup a day of chia seeds, they get faster results than people who are having a couple tablespoons. It's a beautiful, beautiful process. For me, when I started doing omega-3s, my joint pain went away very quickly. And actually, I had a client who had rheumatoid arthritis with nodules on her hand, and the nodules dissolved just by adding the omega-3s that she was missing. It was just amazing. And that doesn't happen in medicine. We don't have any medications that can do that. But omega-3s did. So it's very powerful, and people don't realize how important those are. So while it does seem like a lot, we have to remember that we are trying to balance out a ratio that's been out of whack for most of our lives. So omega-3s are important. And other fats, you really try to avoid anything that's processed. When people want to cook and they ask me, the only one that I'll approve of for cooking would be a little bit of olive oil, just because it's not involved in inflammation. It's an omega-9. Not involved in inflammation. It's still not good for your arteries. It kind of gets things sticky, and it's not, don't chug it. But if you want to spray your pan a little bit, that would be the only one that I recommend using. It has been extraordinary how beneficial diet can be for mood disorders. And it makes sense when you think about it. One of the things I tell my patients now is, you've got this neck that attaches your head to your body. So if you're nourishing your body, your brain's going to be doing great too. If you're eating toxic foods, guess what? Your brain's not going to be functioning well. And that's what I see, is that people who have really nutrient-poor diets, they also have more depression, more anxiety, and more chance of psychotic disorders as well. So looking at anxiety specifically, I had a woman that I'd been seeing since I was a resident, and she was in her 50s, and has had anxiety all of her life. Her mother had anxiety all of her life. And so I did what I knew what to do at the time, was I used medication. And she actually stabilized that medication. And it's important to know that medications really serve a purpose. And I'm a medical doctor and I still believe in them. I just believe that medicines are to serve a purpose. They're a tool, but they should not be the end game, because they will not heal what's wrong with you. Medications will make you feel better. They cut the check engine light. So it's like, you thought there was a problem? There's no problem. Look, you feel better. But meanwhile, whatever's causing that problem, that's still happening, right? So it helps you feel better in the moment. And if you have anxiety, for example, it's really hard to listen to me talk about green smoothies if you feel like you're crawling out of your skin, right? So, so they can be really useful. So anyway, at the time, I didn't know about plant-based nutrition and healing. What I knew about was medication. So I gave her medication, and she did pretty well, and she was stable. She wasn't the happiest person you ever met, but her anxiety wasn't giving her panic attacks, and she was able to function in her life. Anyway, she disappeared for a while, and she had decided she wanted to do all natural stuff, which at the time I would have rolled my eyes at, because I'd just become a medical doctor, and I knew that all the rest of that stuff was not real. Right? Because they would have taught us that in 16 years of training. If kale was important, they would have told me, right? So she left to try to do natural stuff. And her son knew an herbalist, and they put her on about 20 different herbs, which are medications as well. I think it's really important for people to realize that you're still putting chemicals in your body that are having a psychoactive response. It's a medication. But she had a terrible reaction, and she came back to me with the worst depression she'd ever had, the worst anxiety she ever had. She was having chronic panic attacks. She was so depressed she could barely get out of bed, and she'd never felt so bad in her life. So she came back to me and said, I heard that you're doing stuff a little differently now, that you're also using natural means and nutrition. Is there any way you could help me get back on my feet? And so what we did was, I did start medication again, because she was so depressed and she was so anxious that, it takes time for your cells to heal. It's not as quickly as using medications can be. So we started there, but at the same time, I put her on a completely low inflammation diet. And she was someone who was really good at sticking to it. folks with anxiety tend to be better at following instructions because they get really nervous if they don't. just tell me what to do, okay. So, I'm in constant contact with my clients. I see people through Skype. I travel a lot. I see them through Skype, but every one of them has got my cell phone number. My patients and my clients can contact me anytime they need to. So, she would text me and she was nervous about something and I'd text her back, here, just do this, just do that. But she was doing green smoothies every day. She cut out dairy and meat from her diet. She was drinking her water. She was doing her omega-3. She was doing everything she needed to do. And she took her medicine as well. And I realized at one point that I hadn't gotten a text from her in a while. And in the beginning, I was getting about 5 texts a day. I had to tell her to consolidate, just put them all in and hit send at the end of the day, because it was getting to be, but people have anxiety. It's an all-day constant suffering. So I realized I hadn't heard from her in months, and that was very strange. So I called her and I said, hey, what's going on? How are you? And she goes, I am amazing. I have no anxiety. I have no depression. She goes, I've been busy. I'm sorry I haven't made an appointment. I started a new business, and I've been she's doing crafts and things, and the best she'd ever felt in her life. And not in that manic way that she'd gone too far. She just felt content and happy. Her relationship with her husband was better. She'd never felt so good in her life. And so what we did was, we knew we'd gotten results that never happened before. And that's the thing about medications. You can get people better, but you can't get them all the way where they're just happy. It's very hard to do. And so we realized that this was just a dramatic, remarkable thing, and she was so excited. And so we let her be stable for a little bit, and then we started to taper the medication off. And we were able to taper the medication off successfully, and she continued to feel good and do well. And so for me, she was the first person who showed me that the power of nutrition in healing the brain, and that most people walking around who are depressed and who are anxious, who have poor attention span, even people who hear voices, the primary reason is coming from here. One of the hardest things about working with folks with mental health issues is getting them to really stick with something like diet. So people who have trauma, and that's one of the things that I've been teaching for years too, is how to treat trauma. It is just one of the most devastating things, and it leads to lifelong problems with anxiety and depression. Folks who have those kind of illnesses, it's hard for them to focus on what's going on in the moment. So focusing on what they're eating, focusing on exercise, all that stuff, it's really a long, arduous process. I had one woman who bought the Vitamix and she didn't even plug it in for a year. So the hardest part about getting folks with mental health to improve on a plant-based diet is getting them the motivation to do it. So when I have someone who's motivated, the results are remarkable, but the hard part is getting people to do it. Whereas people who have physical ailments, it's usually not the same thing. For example, I had somebody, I was the medical director for a youth program at a nonprofit in Long Beach, California, for 5 years, and I just loved working with that group. It was 18 to 25-year-olds that were, they graduated from foster care or juvenile justice, or they were on the streets. And so these were a really sick group of kids. And they were kids to me. I absolutely adored working with them. But one of the biggest things I saw what was wrong was when they would get some money in their hands and we would help them, to be able to eat, the first thing they would do is get an energy drink and a bag of Cheetos. And then they'd tell me, I can't sleep, I can't focus, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, and it was just, well, your brain is not functioning, and so I actually worked hard to bring nutrition to them. And they told me, the director at the time told me that wasn't gonna happen, that these kids don't care about nutrition. I said, they don't because we're not showing them it's important. And when people, what happened is because they were still young, and especially psychologically, they were traumatized and they were much younger than their age, they were looking for parents, they were looking for role models. And when somebody likes you and wants you as a role model, they do what you do. So for me, the ones that really liked me, they started telling me, hey, I went to McDonald's, but I got that salad for $1, and it wasn't that bad, We got a program going with the farmers markets where they were able to we used to give Monopoly money kind of stuff for them showing up to classes or for therapy and things. They could use that money not only in the corner store where they were buying their energy drinks, but they could use that money to go to the farmers market and buy fresh fruits and vegetables, and they loved it. And every Friday we would feed them, and it used to be pizza when I showed up. And once they kept seeing me drinking my smoothies, they were curious. We started providing green smoothies with the pizza, and they were drinking those. They were making them and drinking them. And I'm still in touch with a lot of these guys. They contact me on Facebook, and they tell me what they're doing, and it's really become something important to them. So I think it's important that we don't, we don't assume that people don't want to hear it. And I think that's the biggest problem with doctors in general who even know some of this information. They say, for example, we know that you can reverse heart disease with a plant-based diet. We know this. You cannot do it with medication, but you can do it with plant-based diet. And when they ask doctors, why don't you teach people this? They say they don't think people are going to want to do it. It's too difficult. Well, let them be the judge of that. I think it's too difficult to go under the knife and have my chest cracked open, but give people the chance, the opportunity, and don't assume that it's not information that they want. So one of the kids that I was working with, one of the youth that I was working with, he was about 20 years old, and he had psychosis. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he was so paranoid when he got sick that he couldn't even eat because he thought he was being poisoned. And he had to watch people prepare his food, and he still would rarely ever touch it. He would pace, wondering, thinking somebody was watching him, somebody was after him. He was very sick, and he ended up in the hospital, and he was put on extremely high doses of antipsychotics. And they really overdo it. And I've worked in emergency psychiatry, I've worked inpatient, and the thought is always, well, go high in the hospital so that they can get better faster because they're not going to pay for them to be in the hospital very long, so they need to get them to look stable. And for me, it's not looking stable, but kind of looking like vacant. But they put them on that high dose to get them out of the hospital, and the thought is the outpatient doctor is going to slowly taper them back to a practical dose. But a lot of times that doesn't happen, and people are on these insanely high doses of medication. So he came to me on triple the dose of antipsychotics that I would expect. And he's a young black male, and actually young black males have the highest rate of side effects that can cause Parkinson's. They have the highest rate of developing Parkinson's-like symptoms from antipsychotics. It's a very dangerous thing to do to this young guy. So what my goal was really to get him down to a more practical level that was going to have less risk for him. And I also, like everyone else, I talked to him about diet. And at the time, I just read a beautiful article that was showing that dairy, milk protein, was a trigger for psychosis and voices. And I told him about that, and he's a very smart guy, and he was very interested in it. And so he decided to give it a go and to go plant-based. And what he did was he gave up dairy, he gave up meat. The only thing he had was fish once a week, but other than that, he just ate lots of fruits and vegetables, and he went to the gym every day. And his voices went away completely, to the point that we were able to take him off the antipsychotics, and the voices were gone. It was the most incredible thing. I still get goosebumps when I talk about it. I've never seen that happen before. And it was the most remarkable thing. And actually, he was doing fantastic, and he went on a camping trip. Months later, went on a camping trip, and all weekend they had just barbecue, meat, and burgers with cheese and processed chips and all that stuff, and he ate what was there, and he came back psychotic again. All of his symptoms came back, and he actually ended up in the hospital. And when he came out, we were able to have that conversation where he really saw how powerful what he ate was. It was really dramatic to see that. So while it's really, really difficult to have someone with psychosis able to really understand and to go along with a change in their diet, it's so important to try and to give them that chance. The reason that I wanted to go into medicine is I just really, really wanted to help people not suffer. I know that I'd been sick for a lot of my life, but I didn't suffer because I had a purpose and I had a focus. And for me, it was really powerful to see that you can have disease, but you can also have purpose. Suffering is really more about not accepting what you've got or about making it your identity. And I never really accepted that I'm a lupus sufferer. It wasn't who I was. It was just kind of an inconvenience, painful inconvenience, but it wasn't my identity. And I really wanted to help people kind of be able to manage their disease, minimize their suffering, and still embrace their lives. And so that was what really pulled me to medicine. And for me also, the suffering aspect was so huge. I actually, at 14 years old, I saw my grandfather, a Holocaust survivor who'd worked so hard to get to this country, survived the Nazis, survived so much, came to this country, worked with his hands, made himself a living, finally retired, became shuffleboard champion, of his community, his retirement community, and then developed cancer. And I watched him get so sick, and it took him 2 years to die because they aggressively went after it with chemotherapy, even though they knew it was terminal. It was in his bones, it was in all of his organs. He wasn't going to make it, and his doctor wouldn't give up. He just kept giving him more chemo. And when my mom asked, well, maybe we should stop the chemo, the doctor actually said to her, well, then it will be your fault that he dies if you stop the medication. And I know that he was doing his best, because we all do, but it was just, my mother couldn't handle that, when he said that. And so we let him continue, and he wanted to continue as well. But it took 2 years of suffering. In the second year of it, he couldn't even get out of bed. Half the time he thought I was my mother. But I stayed with my grandmother, and I helped her take care of him. I helped him go to the bathroom. I helped feed him. And I just saw it take away who he was. And so I thought that was really important too, where I could see even then how the ego of the doctor can affect the suffering of the patient. And doctors, we tend to be kind of overachievers. And when we start to think that success with a patient means that they're still alive, we lose out on the humanity part. Because sometimes success means that we help them find the right time to go, and we help them go with peace and with dignity. And so that was really important to me too, is that when you have illness, you're not just a problem to be solved, you're a whole person, you have a family, you have this whole world that's yours, and we have to help them not only minimize their suffering, but preserve their dignity and their sense of purpose as well. What's really important for me to help people realize is that healing is not difficult. It's not something where you need to hire some fancy guru who's going to go hunting in, the rainforest to find you special herbs. There's not some special potion you have to take. That really healing is going to come from just knowing what to buy at your supermarket. And so I always tell people, you can heal with supermarket foods. It's easy. The hardest part about changing your diet and your health is just deciding to do it. I see people take weeks, months, years to decide it, because they're thinking about, oh my God, I'm going to miss out, and how can I not ever eat cheese, or how can I not ever have that ice cream, or oh my God, steak, blah, blah, blah. And the suffering they create while imagining the change, that's the hard part. Once you decide to do it, for most of us, I know for me, once I make a decision to do something, nothing's stopping me. This is what I'm doing, and that's it. It's the decision that's hard. But doing it's easy. It's literally about knowing which aisles to walk down in your supermarket, which stuff to grab, and which stuff to just keep walking right past. And it's actually really easy. You can do it anywhere in the world. My husband and I travel with our kids around. We just did a whole road trip coming from Texas all the way up through the East Coast, all the way up to upstate New York, came all the way back down through Texas, went all the way up the Pacific coast, and everywhere we stopped, in every city we stopped in, we could find food. Not every city had a plant-based, raw, vegan restaurant, okay? But every single city we stopped in had a supermarket. And so if we couldn't find a restaurant we wanted, we would stop at a supermarket, and we'd buy a whole bunch of fruits and vegetables, and we make a picnic for ourselves, and we had a great time. It's really, really easy to do, and anybody can do it just using their local supermarket. You just have to decide that this is what you're going to do. One of the big questions I keep getting asked is about organic versus not buying organic, and do you only get better with organic foods? And I've heard some people say that that's true. I can tell you, when I changed my diet, I just graduated medical school. I was an intern making 30 grand a year who was still borrowing money from my parents to meet my rent. I was not buying anything organic, not at all. And yet, even though I didn't have the money to buy organic foods and I was just using what I could buy at Walmart, the leftovers from the farmer's market, or whatever was on sale at the supermarket, I was able to transform my health. And so I actually reversed my labs and my lupus, not using organic produce at all. Now, at this point in my life, yes, if I can find organic produce, I prefer that, especially the ones that have the thin skins, if it's apples or strawberries or things like that where the pesticides are really going in there. I would prefer not to eat those chemicals. I would. So I do prefer getting organic produce when I can, but I'm not scared of the ones that aren't. And here's the reason. When you look at T. Colin Campbell's research, and he's an amazing guy. I'm so excited to be sharing the stage with him soon. And one of the things he pointed out is that it's not just what you're exposed to in terms of chemicals. It's whether or not those chemicals are allowed to penetrate your cells and cause those cells to start producing cancer cells. So if you are exposed to pesticides, but you are eating a hyper-nourishing, plant-based diet, you have very low inflammation, then your body is not going to necessarily cause cancer or cause any disease from that. You're going to be okay. I've been okay for all these years with that. The problem is when you are eating super inflammatory foods, you're eating dairy products, you're eating meat, you're eating eggs, you're eating all these inflammatory foods, processed foods, all these oils you shouldn't be eating, and then you add to that pesticides and all these chemicals that we know can potentially cause cancer, now you're in the perfect storm where something can happen. So for example, if you've got a cancer-causing compound in your body, and then you add dairy, which we know the protein from dairy casein is a cancer promoter on the DNA level. It actually tells your DNA, go ahead and make some cancer. So if you've got the right ingredients on board, such as cancer-causing chemicals, now you're in danger. For me, I don't think that it's even possible I could develop cancer. So I'm not really worried about that. So yeah, I think, as I said before, the most important thing is not necessarily the extra stuff you're eating, but what you're missing. So if it's, either eat kale with pesticides or no kale, eat the kale. So a lot of people think that as you get older, your metabolism is just going to get slower, and you're just going to start to get wrinkles, and you're just going to start to gain weight, and you're just going to start to get sick. And that has been the truth in our culture. As we get older, we lose our ability to maintain our weight, we get sicker. Most senior citizens are taking 8 to 10 pills, so that has been the case. But it's not because that's what your cells are programmed to do. It's been the result of how we're nourishing our bodies. So when we're born, most of us who are born as healthy babies have all of the nutrition. Our cells are perfectly functioning, right? It takes years to slow that down. So while the process happens, so let's say you nurse your infant, which I hope you do. If you breastfeed your infant, they're continuing to get everything they need, right? It's only when you start introducing the toxic foods to them that you start to affect the health of their cells. And how long it takes to damage those cells depends on how much of the bad foods they're eating and their genetics. So when you take that, you take the average American kid who may be formula fed, by 1 year old they're on cow milk, so they're already creating inflammation in their body, then they're getting goldfish crackers and all sorts of processed stuff that they're calling food, and they're putting all that into their body. Now they're starting to create changes that are affecting their cellular health, which then affects their metabolism. And when I talk about metabolism, I'm not just talking about your weight. I'm talking about your cell's ability to heal as well. It's really, really important to understand. So what we're seeing, and it's getting worse now, is that while kids used to start getting sick older, we didn't see children getting diseases that we do now. When I was in medical school, they taught us that they thought that adult onset diabetes, which is what it was called then, was going to start happening in kids soon because they were seeing an increase in blood sugars in children. Now, it's not that much longer after that, it's just type 2 diabetes because children get it just as often. So we are poisoning our children so much at this point. Our food supply has gotten so poor that that's actually happening faster than it ever did. So we're now seeing obesity and disease starting at a much earlier age, and it's not because they're old. It's because the foods are so toxic, it's actually causing those changes much sooner than we expected. And that's why now, for the first time in history, they're expecting children not to outlive their parents. So we're in a crisis right now when it comes to healthcare, and it has to do with food. So when it comes to metabolism, it's really about how your cells have been treated over time is going to be how they continue to treat you. So for me, growing up, my parents, when I was a teenager, my parents actually opened Domino's pizza franchises, which for most people, that's a dream come true. It was for me. I got pizza every day. School lunch was pizza. I had pizza for dinner, but I was eating dairy like crazy. I mean, I was a cheesetarian, And for me, between Chef Boyardee and pizza, that even though I still liked to eat salads and fruits, it was too much for my body, especially with my genetics. And by 16, I've got arthritis and rashes and migraines, right? And I'm 6 months away from kidney failure. So really, we got to look at that combination. The cool thing is, this is reversible. Our cells are constantly turning over. We don't have the same cells right now today that we had when we were born. We don't have the same cells we had 5 years ago. In fact, by 10 years, you've completely turned over all the cells in your body, which means for me, having been healed 10 years ago, there is not one cell in my body that remembers having lupus, which is amazing, right? There's not one cell in my body that was ever sick. So we have the ability to turn this around by nourishing ourselves. So you can start today, and it doesn't matter what age you are. And we say, you can get the body and the metabolism of your dreams at any age. You can start today and start literally getting younger on a cellular level. So you can start nourishing those cells, and all the new cells that are getting born now, they've got omega-3 fatty acids, and they're flexible and can receive messages. They've got hydration, and they're functioning beautifully. And if you keep doing that over the years, you're going to have more cells that are healthy than are sick, and you're going to see that transformation happen. You'll see it on the inside based on your digestion, based on your energy, based on your strength. And you'll see it on the outside as your skin transforms and you have this glow and your lines start to go away and you start getting calls from ex-boyfriends or ex-girlfriends going, what happened to you, right? So it all starts to change. So the most beautiful and poignant thing that I've learned through all of this research and my experience is that metabolism is something that you can change. And it's not just this march towards death slowly as you get fatter and sicker in this horrible way that you've got to go, but you can turn that around and you can literally get younger starting today just by changing how you eat.
Every bite you take is actually making you sicker or making you healthier. Your body knows what you did. You can't get away with it, all right? So all right, so I'm here to answer your questions yet again. Yesterday I had an important call from a lab and I had to get off, so I'm back again because I have a spot open. And let me pull up your questions for you. Hope you guys are doing awesome so far in the new year. Hope you've been drinking your smoothies, working on your health. New Year's a great time for a fresh beginning, right? So hope you guys are all doing that. Now, for those of you who are wondering where are these questions coming from and why isn't she answering my questions? So if you post your questions into the direct feed, most of the time we lose them. There's thousands and thousands of people in this group. So we have it organized where if you go to the announcements section, you'll see a post that looks like this. Let's see. Okay, and it says, ask all healing questions here. So what we do is whenever we have a chance, we pop on live and grab your questions and answer them, as many as we can in a session. So here's where I left off. All right, here I go, ready to go. So Nishwa asks, hi, Dr. G. I've started the healing protocol, but once I cheated on it. Now I'm thinking I've lost all my progress, or not. I'm sure it may delay, but one mistake doesn't put me at ground zero, right? So first of all, there's a couple things there, right? Number one is the idea of cheating. There is no cheating when it comes to healing or when it comes to eating. You know, when you think about cheating, cheating usually implies that you didn't follow the rules, but you got away with it, right? That you were still able to achieve a result without actually doing it, right? You cheated on somebody by copying someone's exam, but you got a good grade as well, right? Doesn't work that way. Every bite you take is actually making you sicker or making you healthier. Your body knows what you did. You can't get away with it, all right? So I don't like using the word cheating. You either did it right or you hurt yourself, right? Now, how much damage was done? I don't know. And that's the most honest answer I can give you is I don't know. Let me shut off my sound here. Because there are times where people eat a poor meal, they feel badly, and then the next day they kind of can get themselves back to where they were. And then there's other folks who have a few days of feeling really badly before they can get themselves back. So it really depends how far along you are in the healing process. I don't think you're ever back at square one because you've learned something, right? So you started doing the program, you were feeling better, and then you went off plan and you don't feel well. You've now learned something. As I said in the last Q&A, that's an experiment, that's research. So you did your research, now commit again. So don't let yourself stress and worry, did I undo a little bit? Did I undo all of it? That is just going to make you anxious and it's actually going to demotivate you. Say, you know what, I went off plan, I didn't like how that felt, and now I'm going to dedicate myself 100%. Always use the things that go wrong as research to plan better. So why did you go off plan? How can you protect yourself next time? But put all your emotions in your success. This is a thing that we work on a lot in my rapid recovery group because I find that the way people think about the things happening to their body and the way they think about the decisions they make affects dramatically how motivated they are. So for example, if somebody has a bad day, maybe they've been feeling better and better and better and better and better, and then one day they're in pain. If someone goes, oh my God, I'm in pain, I guess I wasn't healing after all, they're more likely to give up. Versus going, wow, I had 5 great days before I had another day of pain. This is working, I'm doing so well. If I'm in pain today, that just means I need a little more rest today. Maybe I pushed myself harder because I was feeling well, right? How we interpret the things that happen to us dramatically affects how much you push yourself. And if I'm going to get somebody dramatically better in 6 weeks, you better believe that I'm up here most of the time helping them interpret what's happening and stay motivated, right? So when you have a bad day, that's something I really work on with people in terms of like, if you mess up, if you go off plan, don't put emotions into that, put your intellect to that. What triggered me to eat something I know is making me sick? How do I protect myself in the future? So you use it for analyzing and planning, and put all your emotions into when things go well, because that's motivating. All right, so be proud of yourself every day, every time you do something right. That's going to keep you moving forwards. All right, so I hope that really helps you. Michelle, all right, I have an appointment coming up in 2 weeks. I've been waiting 6 months to get one. They're very busy, those rheumatologists. I have a positive ANA and had some pretty frequent kidney pain, pain in my upper leg and in my knees. Strange, I know most of my pain has diminished since starting this, but I'd like to know, what kind of question should I ask to ensure that I'm A, finding out what the issue is, and B, make sure that I'm tracking to see that I'm healing. Currently, I'm drinking a green smoothie every day and eating a cooked meal that's oil-free and vegan at night. Still have the rosacea though. So it seems like there's a lot to unpack in this question/questions. So the first thing is, really you want to know whether or not you're asking the right questions and getting the right tests to track your healing. Realize that most rheumatologists aren't used to their patients actually healing. So they're not going to interpret what's happening with you in terms of you getting better. It's just not the way they operate, because it's not their experience. That's why it takes 6 months to see a rheumatologist, because they're so busy, because people don't get better, right? So that's an important thing to realize, that they're not going to come from the same mindset as you, unless it happens to be one of those rheumatologists that refer to me. That's a different story. Then they are excited and expect to see recovery, right? But if you're seeing somebody who's not done that research, is not interested in that, or not educated in it, they're not going to really have answers for you. So what do? Well, the most important thing you can track then is, what are the markers that show that you were sick in the past? Are they getting better? So the most important thing is to track your symptoms, right? So if your pain is going down, you're getting better. If your skin is clearing up, you're getting better. If your energy has gone up, you're getting better, right? Those are all things that happen as you're healing. The other thing you can track are labs. Which labs tend to be bad for you? Now, for some people, their labs get better really fast. We had somebody in my last rapid recovery group who had been eating the vegan junk food. She went on plan, and in 2 weeks, her inflammation markers and her dsDNA antibodies were in half in 2 weeks. For other folks, they can become 100% symptom-free, where they feel the best they've ever felt in their lives, but they still have their antibody markers elevated for maybe 6 months until those go off and die on their own. So labs are less important than the clinical, which is your symptoms, because many of you can probably attest, most people feel sick for years before their labs catch up, and sometimes the reverse is true. So the most important thing to track is your symptoms. And the second thing you can track, if they are applicable to you, is your disease markers. So they definitely shouldn't be going up, and are they turning a corner and coming down? Is your inflammation markers coming down, or your antibodies coming down? So those are the things that you can look at. What was negative before? Is it getting better now? Negative is in terms of bad before. And if you're feeling like you're still struggling, you're not. So if the rosacea isn't healing, what do you want to do? You want to increase the healing foods, decrease the foods that aren't healing. So if you want to keep that cooked meal, maybe you need to double down on your smoothies, right? And if you're still not getting there, then you're going to try to take away that meal. But remember, I've said this before, your skin is the last organ in your body to receive nutrition and water. So if your skin is not healing yet, it's not getting all the nutrition it needs yet, which is why we hyper-nourish. We get more than we need. So make sure that you are doing that. Hope that helps you. All right. Another question from Michelle. Vanity question. What do you use on your skin again? You said it was a vitamin E cream. What brand? Cleanser. Your skin looks amazing. As I stated above, I have rosacea. So thank you. My skin looks amazing because of my health. So your nourishment, when you get yourself really nourished, to the point that your skin is nourished too, your skin's going to be able to repair damage better. So you're going to reverse aging. You're going to have really smooth and shiny skin. I don't use any foundations on my skin. I just use mineral makeups on my eyes, some lipstick, maybe a little blush, but all minerals, no foundation at all. Even when you've seen me in a movie or TV, I've never used foundation or powders on my skin. That's just coming from my nutrition, okay? So when you have really good health, all of your organs are healthy, including your skin. Cleanser, I don't use cleanser on my skin, very rarely. On a daily basis, I rinse my skin off with water. That's it. So I just rinse off with water. As again, I use mineral powders. Those come right off. For my mascara, I use one that has natural oils in it, but I'll use a little bit of vitamin E oil on or coconut oil on a cotton swab just to get the lashes. But on a regular basis, I just use water on my skin, on my face. And in the shower, we use a soap that's pure. The only ingredient is olive oil. It's olive oil soap. And so, of course, in the shower, I use that on my body. I don't just use water on my body. I use the olive oil soap. And maybe once a week or so, I might use the olive oil soap on my face as well when I'm in the shower. But otherwise, I just use water. For hydration, I like to use a vitamin E cream. You can either use a cream or I like the company Jason, Jason. They make inexpensive products that are really high quality. So, for example, you can get their vitamin E gel. I like the one, I think it's 32,000 units. It's their strongest one. And you can mix that with a little bit of olive oil or coconut oil and spread that over your skin. It takes about 20 minutes to absorb in. You can do that. If your skin is actually doing really well and you don't need a lot of work on it and you just want a nice cream, Jason also makes a vitamin E cream. It's like 11 or 12 bucks for the container compared to hundreds of dollars for the high-end stuff. I'll use that, especially when I travel and I don't want to carry oils around. That's it. The key to having beautiful skin is having really, really good nourishment to your skin. So you'll get there. So follow what I told you to do and you will get there. All right. Oh, not letting me delete it. I'll work on that. Michelle, do you know if Metagenic ships to Canada? I reached out to the company directly, but they never responded. I'm using a 50 billion probiotic, but I'm still so bloated. And since I lost 15 pounds, I look slim but pregnant. Okay, so I don't believe you can use the US site to get to Canada, but I know folks have found probiotics that were made by the same company as Metagenics, but under different names in other countries. I don't know that off the top of my head, so maybe someone else from Canada can weigh in on that. So if the probiotic you're using isn't working for you, then try a different one. Also realize that some of your bloating is going to come from food bulk. There's a ton of fiber, and if you're doing the water as well for my protocol, you're gonna have a lot of water food bulk in your stomach. It's normal to be bloated at the end of the night. Thomas and I are bloated at the end of the night because we eat so much and we're getting so much fiber. We don't wake up and go to sleep with lines on our stomach. We wake up with the lines, go to sleep with the pooch, right? So if that's happening to you, that's normal. That's what happens when you eat fiber-rich foods. That's okay. The other thing that helps with that is abs. I found when I get my abs really strong, then I don't really have issues with the bloating as much because that holds in my gut. When I've let go on my workouts and my abs have gotten looser, then I tend to bloat more. So that's something else that works to hold in the gut as well. Okay, let's see. So the next one here is, all right, tell you what, I got to answer one more and then I got to go. There's someone for us at the door that I need to talk to. So the last one we'll end with is Mary. I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, autoimmune. Is consuming 6 cups of kale or spinach in my smoothies okay to do daily? Yes, and do it. People with Hashimoto's have done so great. If you look through this group using the search engine, you'll find people with Hashimoto's who have reported that they've gotten off their thyroid medicine or dramatically reduced it, or even if they kept it at the same dose, they now have energy and they're losing weight and they feel healthy again because you got to target the autoimmune disease, not just the fact that you're not making the hormones, okay? So I hope that helps. Definitely go for it. Make sure you're getting some iodine, either in salt or in a supplement or even something like seaweed, and that should help you. Now, don't forget, this Sunday, January 6th, are going to be my free classes where I teach my entire healing protocol for autoimmune disease, 100% for free, but you gotta come, okay? So that's January 6th. I'm going to put a link under this video to make sure that you get to the class. If you can't make it live, which is great if you can make it live because you can ask me your questions live and I can answer them, but if you can't, at least sign up anyway so you get the replay sent to you. Don't miss your chance to learn exactly what you need to do to get your health back. See you there.
Dr. Lee is a world-renowned physician, a molecular biologist, and leading author. He's the medical director of the Angiogenesis Foundation.
Every bite you take is actually making you sicker or making you healthier. Your body knows what you did. You can't get away with it, all right, son?
how do we know people get enough protein? The results show us that they get enough protein. But most people who are asking that question are not interested in the results, they're interested in the argument. So I would just let the argument go. So you know what? It's not important. How do I explain that I get enough protein to others? People just can't, nobody believes her that she's getting enough protein. My first answer is stop trying to convince people to, agree with you about things. I find it's a waste of time, and it's really a big waste of energy. Most people who will ask that question about, protein or interrogate about it, not ask out of curiosity, but actually interrogate about something like protein, they're not actually interested in learning about your diet. They're interested in shooting it down because they're addicted to meat and dairy and eggs, and they want a reason to ignore what you're doing. So if they can make it seem like you don't know what you're talking about or you're getting malnourished in some way, it allows them to continue on in their behavior that is actually bad for their health, right? So that's the first thing is, why are you even getting into these discussions? Two, most people who ask the question about protein have no interest or real formal training in nutrition at all. In fact, most of them are eating very poorly themselves. So the fact that they're not really interested in nutrition is an important thing, and they're just kind of interested in arguing. The truth is that people get enough protein, in fact, more than enough, eating nothing but plants. I mean, in my program for example, my rapid recovery groups where people are eating nothing but raw vegetables and fruits and omega-3s from flax and chia, right? Their protein levels usually go up after 6 weeks, not down. Why? Kidney function is better. Absorption and function of their cells are better. So how do we know people get enough protein? The results show us that they get enough protein. But most people who are asking that question are not interested in the results, they're interested in the argument. So I would just let the argument go. So you know what? It's not important. The majority of diseases that people have, especially in Western countries or countries where they eat Western diets, is the overconsumption of animal products that causes the high rates of heart disease, cancer, autoimmune diseases, many other types of diseases. It's the overconsumption of protein, which I put it in quotes because protein is not a food. Protein is a part of all foods. But again, if someone's asking you that, if you really want to engage them, one, ask them why they're asking. Are they interested in learning about the benefits of a plant-based diet? If they're not, then say, don't worry, I get plenty of protein, all my levels are normal. In fact, I bet I get way more vitamins and minerals than you do. Where do you get your vitamins from? But in general, I don't engage in that stuff. So yes, there's ways to explain it. Science is science, results are results. But don't argue with people who aren't interested or educated or trying to get educated in nutrition. It's a waste of energy. Just show them how healthy you get and prove it that way.
I think it was July 2020.
July 2020,
Yeah.
right? So that podcast ended up becoming the most popular podcast in the history of this show. As of today, I think we're at 9.9 million views on YouTube, which is insane. So thank you for that.
Thank
and
you.
sharing your wisdom. But what's really cool is that at that moment in time, you hadn't even launched Huberman Lab, the Huberman Lab podcast. You end up starting the show in January of 2021, and within ostensibly a year, it's become one of the biggest podcasts in the world. Each episode, this sort of self-contained masterclass on some facet of neuroscience or related scientific terrain, and have kind of become like a social media internet superstar.
Oh my.
Like, it's crazy, right?
Oh
like,
my.
how does this
Totally unintended,
feel,
but how does it feel? Well, I'm not big on mission statements, but if I had to pick one, and the thing that's nearest and dearest to my heart is to try and share the beauty and utility of biology. I mean, that's what got me into science in the first place, and I love learning and I love sharing what I learn. And ever since I was a little kid, I've felt this compulsion to share, what I learned. So in the sense that it gives me an avenue to do that, and that people are receptive and hopefully learning from it and enjoying it, and it feels great.
Yeah.
It was not planned at all. 2020, because of the events in the world, started going on podcasts. I was, fortunate to you and Lex Friedman and Joe Rogan and others to give me that opportunity. And then the plan was to write a book at some point about the work in my laboratory and related themes. But one way or another, I ended up in the podcast realm. Lex Friedman suggested I start a podcast, and he said, "I think you should start a podcast, but whatever you do, don't make it just you talking at the camera." So I followed the first part of the advice. We do have guests on, and those are actually my favorite episodes when I can host guests. It gives me an opportunity to showcase amazing colleagues that, for the most part, probably wouldn't get the opportunity to share at that scale. So that's wonderful. And also they get the opportunity to get feedback from the world and the encouragement, because it can be a bit of a lonely road doing science. So overall, it feels wonderful. I feel very gratified that people enjoy it, and I'm having fun.
Well, it's well earned and deserved, and it's actually quite heartwarming to see so many people just gravitate towards and embrace hard science in this way. The idea that millions of people across the world would hit pause on their life and basically listen to what is, for the most part, like a lecture, right? In the way that you would lecture your students at Stanford on, pretty challenging topics, and do it in a way where I think your gift really is as a communicator, to take these very complicated subjects and figure out how to communicate the essence of them in a way that is understandable to the average person without kind of pandering or condescending to them.
Yeah, well, my belief is that if you give people, a minimum of required nomenclature, that they can digest pretty much anything.
Yeah.
And, the podcast weaves back and forth between, hardcore scientific mechanism, and then we'll zoom out and talk about, daily relevance or lifetime relevance. We definitely talk about protocols and things of that sort. So sometimes I use an interest in some wellness or health related tool as a way to teach mechanism.